Hello, everybody here in Portage again, and hello to Nipawin joining us. We are in the middle of a summer sermon series where we're talking about these 4 convictions, 4 prayers, 4 loves that God has given Prairie Alliance Church that we're to continue to live for as a corporate community until they happen. And the one that we're talking about this week is our call to be congregations that represent the demographic of our community. So if our community is 1/3 Filipino, like in Nipawin, then if the kingdom is coming to our churches and to our towns, then it should be representative of everybody there. In the same way, you could say, if you only have a church of poor people, or only have a church of rich people, you're missing something about the kingdom. There needs to be this coming together, different cultures, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and influencing each other and shaping each other so that we can together move to look more like what Jesus is calling us to become. Now, because I'm talking in Portage, I'm going to talk most about First Nations people, because in Portage, that's what our primary call is. And so, if you're not in Portage, you're visiting, or if you're in Nipawin, and by the way, Nipawin is already, our congregation there is already about 1/3 Filipino people. They're doing a fantastic job of connecting with each other, and it's awesome to see the energy there. But here in Portage, things are a bit different. And part of the reason that it's different, actually before I say that, when we get into principles about reconciliation, we're not obviously just talking about how to reconcile with different cultures. You may need reconciliation in your marriage or with your kids or at work or with a friend. So the principles that we're going to get into, how Jesus teaches us to be reconcilers, they apply everywhere. So if for our purposes this morning, our primary application is about this church situated in a community that's 1/3 First Nations, there's all sorts of other applications. So if it's not a primary application for you, the reconciliation stuff, like in Nipawin, will still be pretty helpful. But it's tough to talk about. Let me give you an example. I get to go into stores with lots of First Nations teenagers at West Park, and then I've got 2 living in our home, and I'm surprised how different it is to walk in a store with one of these friends of mine than it is with my son. The first few times that I did it, I was like, why are, I keep seeing the same clerk in every aisle. Why are we being followed? Then you realize, we're being followed because they're supposed to follow kids that look like this. Okay, so that's kind of awkward already, but we're not even talking about it. Why are they supposed to follow kids like this? Just for no reason? Because everyone's racist? No, and here's the hard part about talking about it. Because kids that look like this in this town steal more than kids that look like my son. Okay. Get the tomatoes ready, so that's hard to talk about. So here's how we're going to talk about it. I was chatting with my friend Colin, he's a Dakota, from Dakota Teepee, and we were having one of these conversations that I just started to have with you. And it was taking forever, because it was like 90% apology and 10% clarity. So he would tell a story about a pastor that did all kinds of stupid stuff, and then he would realize, I'm a pastor. And he'd say, but not all of you are like that. And then it'd be my turn, and we'd be inviting him to come to West Park, and I'd be saying what he was going to bring, which is a sacred type of event or ceremony, and I'd call it something ridiculous. Like that, can you do that thing that you do? And I'm like, wait, I don't mean that. There's a better word, I just don't know it. And so we're just tripping all over each other, trying to be, it's like our desire to be politically correct almost stood in the way of our reconciliation. Because reconciliation is about our hearts connecting. So finally, we just had this conversation. He's like, Nathan, you're going to say almost everything wrong. I'm like, yeah, and you're probably going to be tripping all over it too. So why don't we just trust how much we love each other? Why don't we just trust and just believe that I respect you, and I'm not an idiot, and I know this is nuanced and difficult, and you respect me, and you're not an idiot, and you're not So let's just talk from the perspective of love. And let's just be honest about how hard some of these things are to talk about. But if you can't talk about hard things, then hard things never go away. Hard things are never dealt with. So we're going to talk about some hard things. And we're going to do it from the perspective of Jesus, which to some of us already seems like, oh, so it's from a white perspective? But then you don't know much about Jesus. If you think of Jesus as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, that he kind of looks like me, no. Or he looks like, a white-haired grandpa. Even today, 75% of Christians on planet Earth don't have white skin. Jesus belongs to everybody. So we're not talking about that Jesus, in the sense of that Jesus that white people did bad things from a place of power to people who couldn't stop them in the name of Jesus. We never were talking about Jesus anyway. So we're coming from the perspective of Jesus, but this is the cosmic Christ who draws everyone to him, who doesn't tread on anybody. And as we'll see as we get into reconciliation, the way that Jesus teaches us to reconcile, he doesn't exert power or authority on people either. Because you can't reconcile with somebody by making them. Yeah, I know this from when I was a kid. My mom had this thing she tried to do, and it kind of worked when we were little. So imagine like a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old doing it. So me, I clunked my sister or something, and I had to go up, and I had to say this little mantra. You are my sister, and I'm sorry, and I love you, and I'll try not to do it again. And this is like us reconciling. But mom's kind of there with like a gun, right? You're gonna say this. And when you're a little kid and you're used to mom doing that and she's really shaping you, you're like a little piece of clay, it's maybe not a bad thing. Try doing that when your kid's 22. They're gonna just laugh at you. They're gonna right? You cannot force people to reconcile. It has to happen a different way. Jesus shows us that different way. In the book of Philippians, we see 3 keys to reconciliation. And to the extent that you do these things is the extent that you will be a reconciler, whether it's with a culture different than yours or whether it's in your family, whatever it might be. So we'll read through this passage in Philippians, and then we're going to pull out 3 keys to reconciliation in any context, really. This is Paul writing. He's just kind of done a welcome in chapter 1. He's been encouraging them to strive forward, and he's talking about the difficulty that they're having being persecuted, and then he shifts gears a little bit. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, notice how he's like talking about emotions and spiritual things. He's like, if this has been good for you, if this faith kind of does something for you, then here's maybe some stuff to do. He moves from our feelings to things that we can do. If any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Now we're getting into a really famous passage of Scripture, possibly a hymn that the early church sang. We're not quite sure, but really well known then, and you'll see why, because it really captures the imagination. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. And here's the poem, or the song. Who being in very nature God, so this is Jesus being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That's the poem. Now, it's helpful for us at this stage in our life together because I don't believe there's many people in this room that are going, reconciliation? What? What does that have to do with being a Christian? Right? Christianity is just about believing certain things, and then you get like a barcode on your forehead, and then when you die and the divine barcode comes, it goes beep and it turns green, and then you get to go to the right place. So why do we need to reconcile if that's what it's about? I punched my card to heaven. I mean, there's just not that many people left here at this stage if that's what your faith is about, because we push pretty hard against that. We're very much at this church about the point of being a Christian is to form the world, to partner with the Spirit to make the world like the kingdom of God, to make the dreams of God come true on planet Earth. And Jesus himself is reconciling all things to God. We read this in Colossians, and Paul in Corinthians said, and we've been given the ministry of reconciliation. So at this stage in this room, most of us are like, yeah, got it, reconciliation. We don't really need to talk about why it's important anymore or why it's central to a Christian. It's pretty obvious. What's hard for us, particularly with our 1/3 demographic prayer, is how. And I've had numerous people in our congregation come and, with the best of intentions, be like, what's our strategy? How are we going to do this? And I can appreciate the heart behind it, but as soon as you start thinking strategy, you're like, how do we manipulate the situation to get the desired outcome that we want? And that's not reconciliation. Jesus doesn't do that with us. Instead, he does 3 things that we see in here. And this is really the answer to the what's our plan? Our plan is to be like Jesus. It's a good plan, trust me. First thing you need to do to be like Jesus, there's 3 things in this text. I'll list them first. You need to be incarnational, you need to bear a cross, and you need to offer the hope of resurrection. So that first word, incarnational, might not be familiar to some of you, but it's crucial. And they actually, I think they happen in that order, 1, 2, 3 almost, if you're going to reconcile. You have to first be incarnate. What that means is that you have to move into the neighborhood. It's about proximity. When the Bible describes what Jesus did, some translators actually say God himself took on flesh and moved into the neighborhood. So this isn't saying you need to move neighborhoods and get closer to people you want to reconcile with necessarily, but when you have the opportunity to be in proximity with people that you want to reconcile with, you need to walk alongside them. This is very different than the strategy approach. I have a growing revulsion to the strategy approach for this sort of thing. I got invited with Lydia to be part of this podcast. It's the second year going. It's called the New Waters Podcast. It'll be out in September. And it's a bunch of church leaders from across Canada get together and we talk about church things. And this year's topic was about the future. How do you prepare for the future in the church? And the panel was driving me crazy because they're just doing like demographic stuff. They're like, well, there's the baby boomers, and then there was Generation X and Z and millennials, and then they're just like, and so this generation that's coming up in the future, and I'll just make stuff up, they really like Cheese Whiz and hummus, probably more hummus. They really like hummus. So in your church cafe, have hummus, and then they'll come, like and fall in love with Jesus because of the hummus. Like, it's not bad to be relevant, except that it's so very hard. Ask my kids how relevant I am when I try. It's just an embarrassment. Ask the younger people on staff how relevant I am when I try. It just doesn't work. Right? I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I can't even dress myself without a quiche in my house. But the demographic stuff is tough because you're thinking, okay, we have these people we want to connect with, so how do we do that? Well, let's buy some hummus. Let's manipulate. You end up making people into projects. But when you are incarnational, you make the stranger into a sister and brother. It's very different. And so you just walk alongside somebody. But here's the thing with incarnation. When you think about the incarnation of Jesus, who changed more? Jesus or the people he was ministering to? Jesus did. Laid aside his majesty, takes on the form of a servant, a physical body, he's crucified, lives as a kid in a carpet. Like, this is tremendous change. This is not the life he had before. And he's forever changed. Scars in his hands. The incarnation reminds us that if you actually love somebody, you only love them to the extent that they've changed you. If somebody hasn't changed you, you haven't been incarnational with them. So the point of the incarnation is it's not like a new strategy for changing people that doesn't hurt them. No, the incarnation is getting close to people, close enough that they change you. That's love. That's incredibly powerful stuff. And it'll sneak up on you. You have to answer the door in your neighborhood. Some of you know where I live, and if you know where I live, you've maybe noticed the house 2 doors down from mine. It's a rental house, and it's quite the place. And I have had to ask myself honest questions. Would I feel like that place if the folks living there were white? Because there's cop cars there most every week. 7 of them one night. Sometimes we're in our backyard and there's screaming and yelling, and we just go inside because they're a little bit worried. They screamed at our kids and stuff like that. And so it's not a good situation anyway, but I need to ask myself, would I feel a little bit different? And my honest answer is I hope not. I hope it would be the same either way. But I can get finicky about that stuff a little bit. We like our house to look a certain way. We like our neighborhood to be a certain way. And it's a constant point of discipleship and growth for me to live there. And so we look at other places sometimes, wondering if we should move and that kind of thing. But one morning, there's a knock on the door, 7 o'clock in the morning. And it's somebody I recognize from 2 doors down. And they look rough. And they look angry. And I don't know if I should open the door. Then I realized I should at least put pants on. So I go, he's already, it's already a glass door. It hasn't been good for the poor guy. So sweatpants on. Go to the door and doing what you do. Quick head to toe scan. Okay, doesn't look like there's any weapons in pockets. Like I know if there's weapons in pockets. These are the things that are occurring to me. So I go out trying to look like friendly, but don't mess with me kind of look. I'm pretty sure I didn't pull it off. And he says, I want to come over and apologize. I'm like, oh, what for? I got angry a few days ago, and I threw a wrench at somebody in our yard. And I'm just really sorry. I'm like, oh, it's kind of strange. Okay, thanks for coming over. The wrench sailed over the fence and landed in your yard. Can I get my wrench? Sure, let's go get your wrench. So we walk to the back. Now, I don't know if it's the best image for incarnation, but it's like me trying. So I'm walking down our driveway, a little bit scared, not sure what's coming. Didn't wake the family up. Very volatile, you can just tell, kind of on edge. Dude next to me, looking for the wrench that's in my yard because he missed the person he was throwing it at. And we can't find the wrench. And I'm just like, Jesus, give me something to say, some kind of... So, said, you came over to apologize. That's interesting to me. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to do better. Got lots of things going on in my life. I said, yeah, I noticed lots of police there, ambulance. What's up? My baby brother hung himself in the basement 2 weeks ago. Huh, okay. Yeah, that is lots going on for you. So I just said, this is all I know to do for somebody who's hurting is to pray for them. Can I pray for you? Sure. Hand on his shoulder, and here, this is just, when you have somebody who's so clearly volatile and you're praying for them, do you close your eyes? Sort of. It's just, you're just walking the path, right, trying to sort this stuff out. But it changed me, I guess is my point. There was something incarnational in that, because God shifted something that I just wanted to help him. I didn't want to judge him anymore. I didn't want to worry about my property values. Does it actually match my taxes? Does the city know? I just wanted to help him. But not from a place of like, gee, do I ever have good advice for you? No, I just wanted to do something I didn't know how to do for him, but that Jesus knows how to do for him and might want to do through me. So if I get close enough, maybe it'll happen. But what did happen, no matter where he is now, because I haven't seen him for about a month, I'm a different man for the incarnational attempt. First thing Jesus does is he moves into the neighborhood. So whatever it looks like for your door to get knocked on, answer it. Might be in Walmart standing in line and you're rolling your eyes at somebody. No, that's a knock on your door. Whatever it might look like. Next thing that Jesus does is he has a cross. So he lays aside this majesty, he becomes human, and then he lowers himself even to death on a cross, which obviously we are not going to have to do, but there's a sacrifice there. Reconciliation involves sacrifice. Now, the good thing about sacrifice, there's two good things actually, is you don't need a special talent or opportunity or a lot of breaks to sacrifice something. Everybody can sacrifice something. You just choose to say no to a comfort or a privilege or a place of safety or time or finances, and you sacrifice it. And because it's specific to your context, I don't even really want to give a bunch of examples, but you can do it. And the reason that you'll want to do it is not just that you can, it's like sacrifice is an easy thing you can do in a weird way. Is because in the spiritual world, and in the world of relationships, sacrifice is always viral. Sacrifice always goes viral. Somebody gives up something for another person, and they drop that little pebble of sacrifice into the cosmos, and the ripple effects are incredible. You know this in your own life. In my life, somebody took an afternoon when I was 17 or 18. It was Jerry Orthner, some of you will remember him. Took me with him into Winnipeg. This pastor used to be here. Spent a half hour with me, took me to a conference, had me tag along as he visited somebody in the hospital. Took me to this old record shop. I bought a Hendrix CD mainly to try and impress him. But that was a pivot point in my life. Now that I'm in his shoes, I don't necessarily want to bring a 17-year-old with me when I have a quiet day in the city. It's a sacrifice. It's not going to get a monument, he's not going to get a plaque, but it transformed. That little ripple effect is totally different. So if you have a heart to be a reconciler and you go, where am I being incarnational and where am I sacrificing? And if you're like, I'm not, those things are in your power to do, especially the sacrifice. I don't know if you saw this video. It came up on my Twitter feed. It's me being relevant, trying to anyway. The situation is a white judge gets pulled over in the States, North Carolina or something like that. And the camera's on the dash of the police car. And so it's like this picture of white privilege. And he shoots out of the car before the cop even gets out. And he strides towards the car. And you can hear him saying, "Do you know who I am? You better run that plate really fast, boy. Really fast." So he's aggressive, he's threatening, they run the plate. Turns out he's a judge. The next thing you see is the officer coming out and saying, "Sorry, sir, have a good day." The caption on the video is like, "And every black person in America is wondering what would happen if they tried that." So here's the thing, the judge can do that. He's got that privilege. It's maybe not fair or whatever, but that would be laying it aside in a weird way. Just pay the fine. Just stand in line like everybody else. And just trust that your little sacrifices are just poured on by the God that loves sacrifice, that changes the world by sacrifice. You can find something. Last thing that happens is resurrection. Reconciliation involves incarnation, it involves the cross, and then it involves the hope of resurrection. But you can't really offer the hope to somebody unless you've walked alongside them and unless you've suffered a little bit with them. Have you ever had somebody who's trying to offer you hope and you're like, you really don't get it? Like you don't know me and you don't get it. Incarnation ensures that we know somebody. The cross ensures that we get it. And so you're uniquely able to offer that contagious hope to somebody. So there is hope, specifically for this prayer at Prairie Alliance Church. There is hope. I remember last year when I was praying this prayer and I got some interesting feedback about it. I said, I don't know how much longer my heart can take preaching to a bunch of white faces. And some people are like, don't you love us? Well, of course, that's not the point. The point is we're called to become something, and it doesn't look like this. We may not even know what it looks like, but we're being pulled towards something different. And the hope comes from two places. It comes from our growing reputation with our First Nations brothers and sisters in this town, and it comes from our resolve. So let me just talk a bit about our reputation. It's two neat things. Again, I was with my friend Colin, and we were wandering around in the school, and he was talking about a friend of his who's tried out different churches over the course of her lifetime and has actually been in churches where, as a Dakota woman, felt attacked for what she believed. And she said to Colin, she said, but not Prairie Alliance Church. It's different. They love me. I feel accepted. That's huge. She actually said those other places, they preach against me. That's a shift. Our reputation is changing. Every family gets to choose, every First Nations family gets to choose where they want to send their kids to school. And a ton of them choose West Park School. And they might not phrase it this way, but here's why. Because every First Nations kid that comes to West Park School is an answer to prayer. Lots of prayer. Unceasing amounts of prayer, and you can feel it. So our reputation is getting better, and that needs to come first. It takes a long time for people who have been hurt and hurt badly to trust again, and so we will patiently wait and love until our reputation changes and continues to change. And the other is our resolve. It's not 1/3 First Nations by 2022. No. It's got no due date. Because we're giving our lives to it. There's this scene in the Don Shredder, The Little Mouse Reap-a-Cheep, for if your Chronicles of Narnia. And they're going to see Aslan, they're seeking Aslan's country, and this little mouse is doing this inspiring thing. And everybody's resolve is flagging a little bit. And the little mouse says, well, my plan is set. As long as this boat goes in this direction, I'll be on it. But if it sinks, then I'm going to get in my little canoe and I'm going to just keep rowing towards Aslan's country. And then if the canoe sinks, then I'm going to put my life jacket off and swim, and if the life jacket falls off, then I'm going to keep swimming, and at the very least, I'll die with my nose pointed towards that place. That's me with this prayer. And I want to call you into that. Fierce resolve, incarnation, sacrifice, and the hope of resurrection. You can invite the band back. Turn it back over to you, Nipwa. Thanks for joining us. And let's sing.